Hi, everybody. It's Carrie again. Okay, today we're going to go with um, a fiance that I had. One of the longest engagements besides the men that I married. And so we're going to name this one the Bobber. And as everybody knows, I don't put other people's truths out there, just my own. And, I try not to do any blaming, things like that. Sometimes it seems like it, and that's unfortunate, but that's part of my truth. So, and then it gets out there. Um, you should know I've been in my life engaged 6 times, married twice. And one of the things I have found with engagements is I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate, but with all of these engagements, the longest it took a man to ask me to marry him was 4 months, if it was going to go anywhere. And that was my first husband. He took the longest. The rest of them were anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks of being in a relationship, and we were engaged already. My biggest issue with engagements is one, in that 2 to 6 week period of time, the relationship's going great. I don't have any qualms or problems with it. I'm in love and want to continue going forward. When a man asks you to marry him, and you're like, well, there's no problems, but I don't know that I want this to be my forever yet. But I'm not willing to say, no, I'm not ready. Because I guess as a coward, I was a coward. Okay. And I was afraid that if I said I wasn't ready yet, let's hold off on the engagement, that causes doubt in their minds. And then you break up. And I mean, I could see it could potentially be forever, but I'm not quite sure. I think we need to explore the relationship more. So I would say yes to the engagements. Unfortunately, for 4 of them, it didn't work out, and this is one of them. This is one of the ones that lasted the longest for a relationship period of time. We had dated, though, off and on, I should say, almost a year and a half before we actually got engaged. But I say off and on because we were together, we weren't, we were together, we weren't. It just kind of kept bouncing back and forth, and you'll find out why in a little bit. Um, but how we met. One, I met him in between my 2 marriages. He was the big relationship that I had after my first divorce. I lived where I am pretty much right now, and it I lived here about a year, and in that year's time is when I met him online. I was online dating, but not really online dating, so to speak. And he saw my profile. We started talking. He was over in the Green Bay area, which is about 2 hours away from me. And I was like, well, nothing's going to really happen with this guy. He lives too far away. But I'll talk to him. I mean, our conversations were awesome. I was very sexual at that point, and we would have a lot of intimate conversations late at night. So that was the bonus to talking to him as far as I was concerned. He was an attractive man, so I didn't have a problem with it. Eventually, we decided to meet, and I crazily went to meet him, and he was wowed with me. We went out. I spent the night there. The whole deal was I was going to go there. It was going to probably be like a one night stand kind of thing, friends with benefits type thing, and I'd come home, and we'd see each other here and there. There's no real commitment between us. And the day I went home, I get a phone call on my way home, and I'm like, he's calling and calling. And at like the third call, I finally realized somebody's calling me. And so I answer the call as I'm driving. And it's him, and he goes, well, yeah, I know he was all confused. He didn't really know what to say. And I said, well, what's going on? Did I forget something? If I did, I'll turn around because I was halfway home. And he's like, no. He says, you just left. And I go, well, I said goodbye. I'm like, it's not like I just packed up my stuff and was gone while he was sleeping. And I was confused with what he was talking about. And he goes, well, no, like you didn't like hug or kiss me goodbye or, anything. I'm like, so then I'm confused because I'm like, well, you're talking relationship stuff. It was a hookup. Yeah, I'm going home. you know, there's no commitment between us. And so then we talked later after I got home, and that's when he expressed that. He goes, well, no, I didn't expect to like you the way I like you, but after meeting you and spending the night with you, I like you, and I want a relationship with you. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, now we're talking something different because of the long distance. I never had a long distance relationship before. So we decided that we were going to, start traveling back and forth. And what ended up happening is I went there, I'd go there like 3 weekends, and then he'd come to my place on weekends. He did not like to travel. Um, so I did the traveling, and I didn't care. I really had nothing keeping me in my apartment, and he had a nice home, so there was more space and more room. So I went to see him. And I should note one of the things that when I was going into this that I kind of noticed was the initials of men that I date, okay, or I had dated in the past, including my ex-husbands. Some of the things I took note of was their initials and what they could stand for, and I thought I was going to die laughing because I'm like, well, this should have been my first clue, that a lot of these weren't going to work out. But so there was a guy named with initials BK, and that Burger King, have it your way, and that's exactly what it was with everything his way. I was like, yep, that one could have called that. There was BJ for first blowjob, and I'm like, yep, that's all he ever wanted. There was BM, I thought, bowel movement, and yeah, that guy was bisexual, so I was like, that works. And then at that point, I'm just going to stop there. I was like, one of the things I did notice was a lot of the guys' names started with a B. I'm like, okay, I'm done dating guys' names, guys that start with a B. And their first name starts with B. I'm probably not going to date you anymore. They just, they're, they ended up being some of the longer relationships, and the guys I ended up falling in love with, but they were also the worst. So I'm like, maybe I should just stay away from the B names, okay? And anytime their initials can stand for something, like next guy will probably be BS. Actually, the first guy that held my hand, his initials were BS. So you go back and watch that video. That's funny. Now that I think about, see, I gotta stop with bees. Gotta stop with bees. They don't work for me. Anyway, um, so we, went back and forth. We ended up breaking up twice. The second time, though, the first time we broke up and got back together, it was maybe a month or two. We were still talking like friends, and I was really in love with him. There's no doubt about it. And he was a weed smoker, and I wasn't. And I was, at first when we got together, he knew there was no drugs, and I've always had that rule. And then he was like, after we got super serious, and we were talking about me possibly moving in. This was after the second breakup, even. That's when he finally told me. He's like, well, I thought he was, constant weed smoker, like every day. But when I was with him, he wouldn't. And I guess it was driving him absolutely insane. So he had to, plus he knew if we ended up living together, this relationship went further, he was going to have to tell me because he wasn't going to be able to quit. And he did. And I was like, well, I don't care. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Right now, in this day and age, everybody smokes weed. Just about. I don't. But I haven't met anybody that doesn't in the last couple of years, 3 to 4 years. So, I don't know, apparently it's worse than smoking cigarettes. Now, you're outlawed if you smoke a cigarette, but if you smoke weed, you're okay. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't care. I know a lot of people that smoke weed and they seem to be fine. It's when you're starting to take the heavy duty drugs like cocaine, crack, meth, that I see behavioral things, or you're an alcoholic, a lot of behavioral things. That's where I have to draw the line because it becomes a safety issue, really, for anybody involved in that. Plus, the cost of it is so high. I mean, not just financially, it can cost you a lot. So I stay away from it. I don't want anything to do with it. And I don't care how much I love you. When you're doing those kind of things, stay away from me. I won't. I can be your friend. I will not be in a relationship with you. Period. That doesn't go for me. But I have a huge confession to make because the second time we got together, I had trust issues by that point because I figured the first breakup that we had been together for 8 or 9 months when he broke up with me, and he was like, I'm just not sure. And I had a feeling there was another woman, and about a month went by and we got back together. And then we were together for another 3 or 4 months. And then he was starting to talk breakup with me again. And I thought, it's got to be another woman. I'm pretty sure he's still got his profile on online dating. And I'm wasting my time with this. And I knew I was in love with him. So what I did was, knowing what site he went to, where his profile was, I created a fake profile with no picture. I thought, well, this is going to be hard to get away with because there's no picture. I don't know how I'm going to sell this girl. I can't talk to him on the phone or anything, but I wanted to see if he talked to her. So I created this profile. I believe she was from. I created this girl from Colorado who was a nurse or something. I don't know. I can't remember all the details, but it was something like that. And of course, he's from Wisconsin, so I'm like, this is pretty far fetched. But she was supposedly had family in Wisconsin. I made up this big story, and we were chatting online. And he's chatting with me more and more and more, and he's chatting with the online persona and talking to me as his girlfriend less and less and less. I can see where this is going. And I'm not, I mean, to be honest with you, the personality that I was chatting with was my personality. Just some fake details to it. But she talked online the same way I would. So how he didn't put that together, I don't know. But I always say he fell in love with me twice online, is how I look at it. Um, but, he ended up falling in love with this girl, and he wanted to talk to her. I didn't have any pictures. I told him, well, I don't have any pictures. I have no way to put them on. At that point, back in that day, webcams were relatively new and stuff like that. So I was able to get away with that with him. And then, but he wanted to talk to her. So I had told the girls I worked with, who knew how in love I was with him, and they knew about these breakups back and forth. They were not his fans. Okay. My girlfriends at work were, they didn't like him at all. They wanted me to stay away from him. So when they found out I did this fake persona, and that, the whole deal was, I was going to set him up on a date and no one was going to show up. Since he deserves that. Heck with it for what he's doing to me. Because technically he's doing this behind my back, even though it's me. So one of the girls I worked with was willing to talk to him during lunch hour. She knew the whole story and she knew what to say, and she called him and she talked to him. We're all sitting in the parking lot, and me and another one of my coworkers, and the girl who's on the phone was a coworker. And don't do this to anybody. Okay, none of this was right. It shouldn't have even gone that far. Knowing what I already knew, that's where I should have drew the line. I shouldn't have done it to begin with. I should have followed my gut instinct and just said, just drop him like a hot potato and forget about him. Love makes you do some crazy shit. That's all I can say. And I've learned not to anymore. I just now just draw the line and go, bye. I get a gut instinct that he's not being exclusive or he's not being honest. I just stop talking to him. I'm just, listen, I'm not interested anymore, and I walk away. Which probably means I'll never be in a relationship again, because so far all I know is liars on there. But anyway, back to this. So she did talk to him for a little bit, and then he was like, oh, he's really in love with her, blah blah blah. And calls me that night and he breaks up with me officially. We're broken up. He needs a break. I know why, because then online he did wait to set up his official first date with this online girl till after he broke up with me. I give him props for that. Then he says, well, he wants to meet with her. So I set it up at a restaurant near him. He goes there. He's got this rose, she's like, well, you're going to have this rose. And so I know who you are, and blah, blah, blah. So he's waiting in the entryway with this rose. There's reservations. It's a relatively nice place. Of course, she never shows up. I'm sitting there like panicking, going, I wonder, what he's doing. I wonder what's going on. He messages me later that night, texting, and asked me how my day went. And I don't know, I came up with some stupid story. I went skiing. This was winter and stuff. And I didn't really do anything that day at all, but I didn't want him to think I wasn't enjoying my life. So I came up with this story of this fun stuff I was doing. And literally all I was doing was sitting at home crying, because he was going on this date with this girl. He was being stood up, and my friends suggested the three of us should go to this restaurant and sit in a booth and watch this, right? And I'm like, I'm not going that far. No, I'm not doing that. Plus, I don't want him to ever know that I did this. I know what I need to know. It's over. I'm done with this. I said, but the irony is he fell in love with me twice. And he doesn't even realize it. Well, he went and called me that night, and then he said, well, I did have a date. There was somebody I was interested in. Duh, I knew that. But he said she stood me up. Duh, I knew that. You know, I shouldn't be laughing. This wasn't funny. I should never have done this. This was terrible. This is a terrible thing to do as my own spy. But so he's all crying on the phone, and I'm being very sympathetic, and part of it was guilt. Within a couple days, he comes to see me, and we start talking. He comes the following weekend. All of a sudden, he's chasing me, and he proposes. Takes me to a jewelry store to look at jewelry, gets a ring, and that day proposes with that ring. I was like, okay, he must have finally made his decision. He's going to stick with me. So stupid me, I decide, sure, let's do this. It takes me about another 4 to 6 months to get a job in his area, but I do, and then I move. I move in with him, and we lived together for a few months. I know when I moved there, first of all, he had been a lifetime bachelor, and when we got engaged, his family found out. They were shocked. His family knew me because I'd gone to Christmases and family holidays and stuff like that. They knew me really well. I was really close with them, but when we got engaged, they were shocked. They were like, "He's actually going to get married." I go, "Yeah, we're getting married." And then he had to take me to this restaurant to meet his cousin, because even his cousins are like, "No way, I gotta see the girl that you have finally could pin you down," because nobody thought he was ever going to get married. And so, in a way, this is one of those impossible guys, this ultimate lifetime bachelor that has finally decided he's found the woman of his dreams. So I should be honored that at one point in my life, I conquered that. But you don't want those men, trust me. After this story, you won't want them. So people were shocked, and I was excited though. I did love him. I loved him a lot. Never did tell him the truth about the online thing, that I had done that to him. I felt pretty bad, but through the course of living with him, he did end up confiding that he wanted to be a porn star. So I ended up finding a swingers club that we joined and we went to, and there's a whole swingers video coming out that will detail that more. But throughout being part of the swingers club, he did realize that he couldn't handle seeing me with other men, is what ended up getting the best of him. He liked having sex in front of people, as if it was like, 'cause I told him, well, this would be like being a camera open door sex where people watch you. So we swapped partners, and then it was open door with lights on, so other people in the club could walk in, which the room was pretty full. I hate to say it, I was kind of a popular commodity. I don't know why. I guess they're like, she's really beautiful, and there were a lot of couples that wanted to swap with us, and so when they saw it was open door, and I was going to be there, yes, people wanted to watch this. So they did, and I found that I had very little problem. I enjoyed the people watching, and I thought maybe I should have been the porn star, like I wanted to when I was in my 20s, but I didn't, because I was about between 35 and 37 when this took place. And he freaked out. He did not like seeing me with anybody else. And so that caused a few problems. And then we ended up also finding out that he had he was curious bisexually. Okay, I'm not going to go into all of those discussions that we had, or if anything ever happened. That's his story. I was very supportive of everything he had to say and do, because what else was I going to do? This is his sexual confusion, and all I can do is step out of the girlfriend or fiance role at that point and be a true friend. If forcing him to make a decision or be with me, or, be, you know, if he has, any kind of bisexual tendencies, that's his choice and his decision. And it's not for me to make for him. So I really had to try to step out of that role and just be kind and compassionate and caring and understanding to how he's feeling, what he's expressing. I always wanted him to be able to feel like he could tell me anything. And I wasn't going to judge him for it, whether a relationship lasted or not. That I wasn't going to force it. Those kind of relationships, when you're forcing it, when you're, for example, just take a man and woman relationship where the woman's constantly checking his phone and where are you at and blah, 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 the constant watch over your shoulder. I always say don't do that to your men. Now, most likely the men are going to cheat, okay? But they're going to cheat right away. You're going to get hurt. It's going to hurt because you're going to feel like you weren't good enough. But let them do it right away, because the longer you're in that relationship, the harder it is to deal with, the more betrayal you feel. And if they're really going to be true and sincere to you, you don't need to watch over them. You can trust them. I know that trust is one of those really hard things to give right off the bat. Everyone says you should earn it. I kind of believe that if you want to find out the truth to any relationship, trust right away, because the truth will come out within a very short period of time. And you can cut your ties, you can move on, and you can find what's right for you, rather than wasting all that time, wasting all that energy, wasting all that love. And hopefully it's not bad enough where you can still be friends, versus, once it's gone that far, if you've held on to them, they're going to eventually, it's like a dog you keep chained up. If they ever break that chain, they're going to go for the gold. They're, because they don't know freedom. So the second they get that bit of freedom, they're going to do everything you don't want them to do, because you have chained them down. Any man who really loves you, or any woman who really loves you, you don't have to chain down. They're going to be there. They're going to be faithful. Just like the dog that you don't chain, that is going to be faithful to you and loyal, they're not going to leave the yard, or they're going to immediately come back. Pets are a little bit different than humans, but I think you can kind of see the analogy I'm going for there. At least I hope so. But anyway, eventually one night I was like, okay, well, this relationship really isn't going anywhere. We don't have pictures together. We don't have this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, if you're really going to pursue this relationship with me, we need to do relationship things. I got kind of, not disappointed, I don't know how to put it, frustrated with the waiting on the sexual confusion thing. And I'm like, I need to move on with my life. So you're either with me or you're not. At some point you have to decide this. And the next morning I woke up for work. He had already gone to work, but he had left me this nice long note that said, we're breaking up, with just a check sitting there for all the money I gave him, to put towards the house payments while I was living there. So he gave me any money I gave him back. And I thought, oh, this is nice. I got to go to work now with a breakup note. And here's your money back. Go, leave. It felt cold. It felt so cold. As understanding as I had been, it just felt completely empty in that moment. And it was a really hard day. He had some friends, because he had been the ultimate bachelor, and some of his friends, one was a bachelor like him, another had been married and divorced, but was kind of living that total bachelor life. This was a group of guys that are probably never going to get tied down again. And he had this former girl that he had lived with that, I don't know how this all transpired, but they had lived together for quite a while. She got pregnant. I guess she had gotten pregnant before she actually moved in with him, with somebody else's child. At this point, he didn't know. He thought it was his child. She had the baby. They started raising the baby. He thought this was his child all along. When she left, prior to paying child support, he had the paternity test done and found out it wasn't his kid. So for a couple of years, I guess he had been raising this child that wasn't his. And so, what ended up happening was his guy friends just were not fans of any of his girlfriends. I always say that how much they hated his girlfriends when he was in these relationships. And he goes, they're probably not going to like you either. They don't like anybody. Well, I had met these two. One of them helped me move in, and me and him off and on were okay. And I'd gone to this softball tournament. He actually sat there and had a conversation with me. And I was like, "Whoa, this is weird because you're supposed to hate me. I've been so forewarned how much you were going to hate me, because it was his best friend, and for some reason, his best friend always got kind of jealous of women in his life. Like he wasn't going to have enough time to spend with him. I think it was a time thing. He was really nice to me, and then his other friend that he says, this man, is divorced and he hates all women. He will never like women. And he came over one night, I think like for endless hours. We made pots of coffee and me and him were talking and talking and talking and talking. Like we were kindred souls. And I mean, we got along so good that here's my fiance sitting, I'm sitting in a recliner. My fiance is sitting on one sofa and his friend's sitting across from me on this other sofa. So my fiance is kind of like in between us, but watching TV while me and this guy are just having this endless, endless hours of conversation. And then we went in the kitchen, had more hours of conversation. And my fiance's just like looking at me like, what the heck is going on here? He hates everybody and he can't stop talking to you. And I'm like, I don't know. And then when it was time for me to move out, I call this guy and I go, can you help me move? I need people to help me, and I don't know if he's going to help me. We broke up. So I'm planning my move, but the Super Bowl kind of comes in there. And this friend of his invites me to his place to watch the Super Bowl. Well, my fiance is out doing his thing because we weren't doing things together anymore. We were technically broken up, just cohabitating until I could get into my apartment. And so I go to his friend's house to watch the Super Bowl, and nothing romantic happens. But I'm like, I'm really nervous. I'm living with him. I'm spending time with you. Me and you are talking on the phone all the time. I don't know if he's going to get jealous if he finds out and he's going to freak out and what's going to happen. And I've got a couple more weeks to get in my apartment. And his friend had agreed, all of his friends had agreed to help me move. So I was like, okay, so the man haters were like, yeah, let's get her out of there, I guess. I don't know. But so, but his friend goes, I'll call him right now and tell him you're here. Because I have no problem what because I said, I don't want you two getting, into a fight. He goes, no, I don't give a crap what he thinks if I'm spending time with you. So I knew at this point his friend really, really liked me. And I move out. His friend helps. And we make arrangements like the following week he's going to come over to my house for dinner. So it's kind of like a date, but I had so much unpacking and stuff to do yet at that time. And I did want to see him, but yet I was just overwhelmed and exhausted. And so I did call him and left a message. And I says, we're going to have to cancel this weekend. It's just not going to work. Then I never heard from him again. I think he was furious, probably felt like I used him. That was not the case. I would have dated this guy had he called me back. I would have dated him. So I don't know if his whole ploy was to get me out of there, was to make my fiance jealous so he'd break up with me. I don't know what this whole guy ring thing was, especially with the sexual confusion. If maybe there was something going on, I don't know, not my truth to own. I don't care at this point, okay? But I did find it funny how his friends were, he had me so forewarned and worried that these guys were like going to X me out and not have anything to do with me or say nasty bad things, and they all turned out to be great guys to talk to. I could sit down and have conversations with any of them and tease them, and I don't know. That was just, I did fit in a way, but I don't know why. Maybe I didn't. I can only give one sided perspective here. I could have been completely missing something overall. But anyway, it didn't work out at all. 4 months later, we stayed friends, and he came over and he helped me hang up pictures and stuff like that in my apartment and put some stuff together. But I think we were together one time sexually after the breakup. But I started dating my second husband, and so we had been broken up. I'd been in my apartment for about 4 months when my second husband proposed, and I still had keys to my fiance's house. And we had been talking on the phone here and there. And so I said, well, I need to come over and see you. And my fiance at the time, my second husband, knew I was going to go do this. I said I had to give him his keys back. So I went over and I talked to him and I said, "You should know, and I explained my new relationship and how we got engaged. And I said, I'm engaged. I need to give you your house keys back. I clearly will not be using them." And I don't know, I wasn't really prepared for this, but he just sat down, he started crying, just sobbing. I'm like, "Why are you crying? What's wrong?" He goes, "It's really over. It's really, really over. We're never getting back together." I go, "Not this time, no. No, everything that happened, yeah, we're done. I'll always be your friend. I'll be someone you can talk to, but no, we're never gonna be in a relationship. Like that. That's too much transpired. This is over. You made the decision, dude. And when you made that decision, it was done. I went through a lot of heartbreak, a lot of pain, days of sobbing, and I don't want to go back and feel that stuff again. And I would always be afraid he would do that to me. So I said that it's definitely over. That surprised me. I don't think I've ever had a guy cry over me like that. But as time went on, there were some other things that I did learn about him that our relationship went to work. Nope, I wasn't what he was looking for. Nope, it wasn't gonna be me. I'll just leave it there. I'm just gonna leave it there. The rest of that I found out afterwards, it's his life. I still adore him as a human being, and I would always be his friend if he needed a friend. I did see him one time really weirdly. There were these kittens that I was raising for the Humane Society. Some guy had brought them in, found them on the side of the road. Apparently, like the mother cat somebody must have dropped off the mother and the kittens in a box and set it at the side of the road. And they got out of this box. And some of the kittens had got run over with the mother cat getting hit on the road. There were these two little kittens that were still in the box. And this guy had picked them up and brought them to the Humane Society. So I don't know what to do with them. And they had just barely opened their eyes. I mean, they couldn't even really see anything as they were trying to walk. So they had me being one of the kitten experts to be able to raise kittens and get them to survive from that age without a mother. They call me that night and asked me if I could take in these two kittens. I said, absolutely. So I take them in, and the whole deal is I'm going to raise them when they get to 6 weeks. Get them spayed or get them spayed, and then this guy was going to come back and get these kittens. He wanted them. He just didn't know how to keep them alive or get them. He knew they were too little to be without a mom. So I raised them and I got them toys and special food and everything, and took them in the day he was going to pick them up. Found out that he picked up these kittens that night. Everything went well, but then the next day, I happened to be looking at the Humane Society page, or a couple days later or whatever. Something prompted me just to look at the Green Bay one, which was odd because I was working with Appleton. And Appleton did take their animals to the Green Bay shelter area sometimes because they would have too many cats. And I just looked at the Green Bay site, and there were these two kittens that I raised. They were out there with the names I gave them and everything. I was like, they're available. I want them. I wanted them back so bad. So I contacted them that day. The next day, I was able to go get the kittens. I was so excited. So I drove over, which is about an hour drive over to Green Bay, and went there, got the kittens, but I took the back streets, and I don't know why. It was like, I think I had my GPS set for no freeways or something, and I didn't care. And I was halfway there, I realized, I'm not taking the freeway, whatever. It's a nice, pleasant drive. On the way home with the kittens in the vehicle, there's this dump truck driver, which is odd because my boyfriend, or my fiance at the time, the one we're talking about, actually was a dental hygienist. Or kind of like, well, not a dental hygienist. He did end up going to school afterwards for that. But while I was with him, he actually worked in some kind of lab where they made the crowns and stuff like that. That's what, he did, fine detailing of these crowns that they put in your mouth, in your teeth. And then he went to school to be a dental hygienist, I guess. I don't know if he ever really did that, but here he was on the side of the road walking from the ditch to this driver's side of this dump truck. And I'm like, I swear that's him. And but I drive by, and the oddest thing was, I don't know if he was taking a piss or whatever on the side of the road, but there was a cop there too. Like, why would the cop let him pee on the side of the road? So I don't know if the cop had just recently pulled him over, what the whole situation was, but I just drove on through. I had to still had his phone number, so I texted him, and it was his number, and I said, "Were you at such and such a place today on this road?" And he's like, "Yeah." I go, "Were you driving a dump truck?" He's like, "Yeah." And I go, "I drove past you." I was like, this is so odd, because it had been at least 10 to 12 years since I had last seen him. And then he was like, "Yeah." So we talked a little bit, and he goes, "Are you still married yet?" And I says, "Well, technically, yes." My marriage was going downhill, and we were talking divorce at the time. It was prior to my second husband trying to kill me, or what I knew what was going on at that point. And he says, "Well, we shouldn't," I said, "Well, we could still be friends and talk." And he said, "No, because I was still married, and he didn't want to," and I don't blame him at all, but I thought, what a weird thing to happen after all that time, to see him out of nowhere. I'll still never figure out why, but I always say everything happens for a reason. God has a plan. I still, though, to this day, can't figure out why that happened. Maybe someday it'll make sense. But the whole thing, anyway, that was the big fiance, the one that lasted the longest. And there's a couple things that came to mind when I recounted all of that. And one was a quote that I really have fallen in love with. And it says, we aren't called to be like other Christians. We are called to be like Christ." And I thought, yep, the compassion, the kindness, that had to be there for us to stay friends all those years. There's a lot of understanding that I had to have, but Christ would not have created a second online profile either, like I did, and taunt the person in. So I'm like, I need to remember not to be like other men, to be like Christ and do the right things. So, and that's one of the reasons, or to be like other Christians, is, other Christians can definitely lead you down the wrong path. So, what's best is not to say, "I'm going to be like the rest of the Christians in my church," or whatever. In other words, what the quote is trying to say is, be like Christ. You don't have to be like other men or Christians and say, "Well, because they did it, it's okay for me to do it because they're a Christian." So, no, if Christ wouldn't do it, don't do it, type thing. So don't be like other Christians, be like Christ. That's the best advice I could give you if you're looking at being a Christian, or you are a Christian and there's hypocrisy, around you. It's not what they're doing. Look at what Christ would do. The phrase from the Bible, or the passage from the Bible that I've chosen, is Acts chapter 5, verse 29. And it says, "But Peter and the apostles answered, 'We must obey God rather than men.'" So, it's when you're pushed into something, or you're confused, or, what I should have done with the whole swingers thing and him wanting to do the porn stuff. For example, I'm just going to pull that out, is I shouldn't have done what other people do. I shouldn't have said that it's okay to explore that. Would God have approved? Not does man approve. And a lot of times in my life, I have often said, well, the world has changed a lot since the Bible was written, right? So we're going to follow biblical times. We have to realize, well, when the Old Testament versus the New Testament, a lot changed. Jesus kind of came, and it looks like he changed the rules, but he didn't really change the rules. He just tried to put them in a simpler form so we could understand them a little bit better, and try to make them easier to follow, especially through metaphors and parables. Okay? Nothing really changed, except that God now could forgive us because Jesus gave his life. Because there's a huge part in the Old Testament, the forgiveness wasn't there. Jesus had to come so we could be forgiven, and God knew all along that was going to have to happen. Right? It was going to happen, and when the time would be that it would happen. And it happens in God's timing, not ours, right? So, like revelations in the Bible, that's going to happen when God says, not us. But a lot of the things that I thought, well, God's going to say this is okay because the world has changed a lot. As the world changes and we open up more sexually or, things like that, the rules will change. Okay, so God will, he's got to approve of it. Okay, that was me rewriting my version of the Bible, me trying to put words in God's mouth that he would be more accepting when he clearly states, that's not what I would do. That's not what I would advise you to do. And now I look at God as a father that would have told me, let the boy go. Don't create that online profile. Yes, other people would do that. Yes, man would do that because he's curious. But I need you to trust me. This is all happening because it's not for your best good. But then, of course, God knew what I was going to do. I was going to do it anyway. And then with the, sexual confusion, I don't think God is disappointed that I was understanding about that, because Jesus was a compassionate person and forgiving person. And I think that was a point in life for me to try to learn those things. But some of the things, that were done in the relationship, like joining the swingers club, that's what men do. That's what, the temptation and the path that we're on to do stuff like that, where God would have said, no, I don't approve of this sexual immorality. And instead of doing what God would do, I did what man would do. And I tried to make excuses for it. So the things that I learned out of that was stop making excuses to justify temptations. Start being stronger and fight those things. I was also a full-on sex addict at the time, and I was using those excuses to say it was okay. I mean, even though I wasn't a Christian then, I still believed in God. I believed there was one divine being that was, going to judge me when the world was done. I did believe, God the Father was always the divine one, or the God that I followed versus, some of the other gods that other esoteric people followed. So I did still, follow the path of Christ as far as my divine ruler. I just didn't accept Christ as my savior. Okay, that was probably the biggest difference between me then and, my belief in God then and my belief in God now. And I didn't read the Bible, and I didn't study it like I studied the other gods. I gave a lot of the other gods time. I didn't give the biblical God. So, and that was a bad thing. But anyway, life lessons. And I want to say I don't regret. There is regret, but it was something I had to experience, and God knew that before I was even born. I was going to go through that and what decisions I was going to make. Good, bad, and the ugly of it is I don't look down upon other people for anything. It was a relationship that had to happen. I can't say he's a bad guy at all. And there's, he had his flaws, just like we all do. But it is what it is. And through the course of it, I have learned not to follow the path of other men. If I'm with a guy who says we have to be part of a swingers club, I'm going to say, well, this relationship's done then, because that's not something that I'm willing to bend to do anymore. I'm not willing to sacrifice myself and my beliefs to satisfy other people anymore. I've learned to stand on my own and be strong in that, and not be codependent and not be desperate and not to settle. If that means I'm alone forever, then I'm alone forever. I'm good with that. I've always got God. I'm good. Anyway, I hope that there was something somebody could pull out of that. But as I recount my tales here, my life story, that was one of them. It was a major engagement, a major, really on and off relationship in my life that did have long-lasting effects because a lot happened. You'll have to watch the swingers video to really see probably more of the moral of the story and the lessons that'll end up coming out of that as I go into more details of what happened. He was also a porn addict, so sex was difficult. He couldn't, come with me during sex, and that was difficult on the relationship. So if you watch my porn video, he's one of those guys I'm talking about too. So those are tough relationships. But anyway, stay true, stay strong, stay on the straight path. Don't let other people convince you or guide you to do things just for the sake of a relationship that are immoral or, would cause you to say, well, okay, because I love this person, I'll do this. Don't do it. Okay, that's the one thing I really learned is to stay true to you. And that relationship isn't right for you if that's the case. All right. Love you all. Bye.